Hi, and welcome to this webinar, which is all about how to manifest the 2021 of your dreams. Thank you so much for being here, and I really hope that you find something in this that is useful for you in really giving yourself what you need and the support that you need to create the 2021 of your dreams. My name is Laura Hugill, and I am Mindfully Laura on Instagram and a bunch of other places on the internet. If you hear any noise behind me, that's probably my little dog Layla or my puppy. And for those of you who joined us for this live, I know that my puppy was making a little bit of noise during the meditation. So we're hoping that in the webinar, the puppy stays sleeping. But thank you so much for your understanding. We're all dealing with working from home and new challenges, and that's part of life. And yeah, we're just rolling with it. So I'm really excited to talk today in this webinar all about manifestation. I'm going to go through what I went through in the live class and also add in some of the questions that we heard both yesterday and also since the workshop. I've received so many questions, great questions from many of you. So yeah, we're gonna dive in. So the first thing I'm going to do is just introduce you to me and kind of what got me started in diving into manifestation. So I am originally from England, and I currently live on the West Coast in Northern California, just north of San Francisco. And I always dreamed of moving to San Francisco, and I really didn't know why. And when I started my job with my employer, which is currently Google, 7 years ago, I was definitely not someone that was big in the self-development space. I didn't really read self-help books, definitely didn't know what meditation was, or I wasn't really open-minded to that kind of thing, I would say. I was in my mid-20s, very much a type A, ambitious, achiever type personality. And I was on many levels very lucky and very privileged, and I still am. And at the same time, there were things in my life that I really struggled with. I really struggled with relationships. I really struggled with anxiety, depression, and even started having panic attacks around the time when I started at Google. And so, I had this image of moving to America and my life magically just becoming everything I wanted it to be, and even had this image of me becoming this person who I wanted to be, a person who felt worthy, who felt beautiful, who felt that she had amazing family and friends and connections and a loving partner and all of the things I wanted. And so I moved here with those high hopes, and of course, within a few months, quickly realized that those dreams were not going to happen. I was exactly the same person that I was in the UK, and I was falling into those same patterns that I had done when I lived at home. So finding or manifesting those relationships that didn't make me feel good, where I was not treated well, where I wasn't getting what I wanted to get from a relationship. And with work, I found myself in a role that I didn't enjoy. And yeah, there was just a lot of kind of sadness and depression and anxiety, a lot of anxiety. And I didn't really know how to fix this. And so luckily, again, I'm very privileged through Google, I had access to therapy, and I started going to therapy. And that was really the start for me of diving into this work. And very soon after that, I was introduced to mindfulness and started to really dive deep into mindfulness. And so now I'm a professional coach, and I really love nothing more than supporting people like you to live a life that they absolutely love. And really, it's the interweaving of things, many things that I'm passionate about: mental health, self-development, mindfulness, and now manifestation. And I really see them all as being very, very linked. And so, yeah, now I very intentionally work on who I am and who I want to be and what I want to manifest. And for me, manifestation is really just that, making things happen. We're manifesting all the time whether we know it or not. We're making things happen. And sometimes those things are going to be things that we would objectively say that we want, and other times they're going to be things that we would say that we wouldn't want. And I realized through doing a lot of this work that I was actually manifesting all of those years, these relationships that didn't serve me, even though I didn't realize that I was actually really driving what was happening, even though at times, many times, I felt helpless. And so maybe that resonates with you, or maybe it doesn't. But I think each of us have areas in our life where we manifest what we want really easily. For me, career has always been something that has been easier for me to manifest than relationships and love. And then over time, I'm seeing things shift. And so maybe there's an area in your life where you're like, yes, I feel like I manifest really easily, but there's another area where I struggle. And that's completely normal, totally normal. That is kind of the beauty of life and the beauty of this big experiment that we're all part of living. And so my aim for today is to take you through my 6 steps where I've basically just looked at all of the amazing things I've manifested and then looked at like my process for that. What was I doing? What was I not doing? And so today I'm going to go through these steps. I've written some notes to help me. And I want to also weave in some of my stories from how I learned this, and in the hope really that it will help in your lives with whatever you're facing and whatever you're seeking to manifest in 2021. So the first step to manifest that I came up with is giving yourself permission to dream. I realized when I started reading self-help books maybe 4 or 5 years ago that a big thing that I had been missing in my life was giving myself permission. I realized that I had not been giving myself permission to dream big. I'd always been thinking within the lines of the box that had been drawn for me, whether by my parents or whether by my societal upbringing or just what I was seeing around me as possible. And it was only when I started thinking to myself, what would I want to be true about myself if there were no limits, that things really started moving quickly for me. And I'll give you an example of this. For many years when I moved here, maybe for the first 3 or 4 years, I was commuting every single day from San Francisco to Mountain View, which is only about 40 miles, but it is awful traffic. For anyone who lives in the Bay Area, they know, awful experience. And it didn't make me sick, but I was already struggling with health issues, and it really exacerbated those health issues. And so every day, my energy before, during, and after the commute was really, really low. I felt nauseous. I had headaches. I just didn't feel good. And yet I never thought to myself, I need to make this a priority to either find a new role or switch my role or switch my location. I never gave myself that permission. And looking back on it, it's like, why didn't I think, why didn't I think that that was important enough and I was worth, my health and my well-being was worth enough for me to have that conversation with myself and with my work? And I didn't. And I think a big part of that was I've always tied up a lot of my worth in what my superiors and what my job says about me. And in my head, I had this picture of myself as someone who does what's expected of her and doesn't ask for too much. And so when I suddenly realized that what I really truly wanted was to not have to commute anymore, I honestly was fearful and crying because I knew I would have to have that conversation with my boss, and I would have to deal with the chance that they might think less of me because I was asking for something for myself. Now, for many people, you're probably thinking, what? That's crazy. Of course you can ask, to move or whatever. And that means that that particular thing isn't a block for you. And we'll talk about that in a few steps. But for you, maybe it is resonating, or maybe it's something slightly different. We each of us have these kind of blocks when we manifest that we need to work through. And the first step is really just giving ourselves permission to say, if there were no limits, no blocks, if you didn't have to have any conversations you didn't want to have, but you got to choose what was true, what would you choose? And that was a big turning point for me in realizing that wherever there was something in my life I really didn't like, whether it was something in my relationship, something in a friendship, something in my body or myself, or something I just really didn't like, I had the chance to change it or change my relationship to it. So giving yourself permission to dream, I think, is so, so important. And in the practice that I'm going to include as part of this webinar, that is something that we're going to really work on, is just giving ourselves that first step of permission. A really good question for this is, if there were no limits today on who you could be, what would your life look like? So I'll leave you with that, and it's a great one to journal on. The next step, step 2, is see it to believe it. This has 2 major elements. So the first element with see it to believe it is around visualization. I use visualization a lot when I'm manifesting. And I do it because I really believe, when I've read a lot of the research and the neuroscience around this, that our brains are actually really amazingly capable of visualizing something, even if it's not happening, and producing the same physiological reaction in the body as if it was happening. And the example that sometimes I read about, and I've read in quite a few mindfulness books, is the experiment where they had a group of participants. Some of them were playing piano scales, for a long time. I don't know how long, several minutes or hours a day over a certain number of times. And then at the same time, another group was not playing the scales. They were just imagining playing the scales in their mind. And then at the end of the experiment, however long it lasted, they tested both groups for, dexterity and ability to play these scales. And they saw a very, very small, if any, difference between the groups. So the group that didn't actually ever play the piano had actually created the same improvement in their physical ability as the group who were physically practicing. And they've done similar experiments with muscle testing, like actually imagining that you're doing, whatever this is, I don't know, pulling weightlifting. Oh my God. You know what I mean, lifting weights and things like that. It's not the same. You don't get this exactly the same, but you get more than if you were not visualizing at all. So those kind of studies absolutely amaze me. And, I think there is this whole cliche around fake it till you make it. And I think one of the reasons why that works so well is that we're actually priming our brains in visualization. We're priming our brains to believe that it is really possible for us. It's already happened as far as our brain's concerned, because they've seen it in the visualization. And it makes us so much more likely, and our brains, to therefore recognize that situation or those opportunities that will lead to that situation in future. So the example that I give is when you decide the new car you want or the new pair of shoes, you suddenly start to see it everywhere. Oh, that person's got those sneakers, or that person's got those sneakers, or oh, there's that car. And sometimes you think, oh, everyone must it must be really popular. Everyone must be getting it. And in fact, what's happening is your brain has learned that thing is important. And our brains are just so adept at knowing what's important to us and then really highlighting that in everyday life. And so I've been really fascinated about this in the context of what we notice about ourselves and understanding negativity bias, and also understanding that we see our own flaws so much more prominently than other people. And actually, I've done a lot of work on this myself around manifesting, around my experience with my looks, and worked with a fantastic therapist on this. And so I fully believe that our brains are incredible and very, very good at sort of manipulating the truth to sometimes make things more prominent or less prominent, depending on what it is. And so I want us to use that to our advantage rather than highlighting the things I don't like about myself. I want to show my brain that I want to be rich and that I want to have an amazing marriage and that I want a beautiful baby and all of those things, so that I'm actually using that brilliant brain power for what I want, not what I don't want. So that's the first element. The second element of this, and someone mentioned this on the live class, that visualization is really challenging for them. And I really understand that. And for me, I actually don't really see things when I visualize. It might be worth mentioning. It is really, for me, this five senses reality. So I definitely go into a kind of meditative state, and then I'm sort of imagining, what would I be doing? How would I be feeling? And I sort of imagine myself in that as if in a 3D environment. I'm actually in it myself, not watching myself. And so that's one piece on that. But the second piece is, if any of that is really challenging, then we can sort of help ourselves with this see it to believe it step by finding inspiration in others around us. So Lacey Phillips, who is a manifestation advisor, and I really love a lot of her work, she has coined this term expanders, which is basically people that are around us, either in real life or people we know on Instagram or people who are famous, who embody what it is that we're looking to manifest. And she has done a whole load of this. So I definitely recommend her podcast, the Expanded podcast, and her work at To Be Magnetic. Expanders, I think, are a really great way to see it to believe it. So if let's say an example for me, I'm manifesting beautiful, clear skin. I've had acne and very bad health hormone problems for decades, since I was 13. And so for me, finding someone or many people who had been through similar experiences and then had cleared their skin was hugely expansive for me in those moments where I really struggled to embody for myself what it would be like to have beautiful, clear skin. And it's going really well for me, by the way. So that's good. So I'm celebrating that. So yeah, that's the second step, see it to believe it. So it's really all about using that amazing brain to find examples outside of yourself or inside of yourself in terms of visualization to believe it. And this is also where I love a vision board. I just redid mine yesterday for 2021. And at the end of this, and you'll see in the follow-up, I will share my template for you to use from Canva. I absolutely love doing a vision board for this because it's a physical, I'm looking at it right now, there's a physical representation right in front of me every single day of what it is I want to manifest. That's a great way to see it to believe it. The third step, embody the energy. So with permission to dream and see it to believe it, we're really looking into the future or projecting kind of what we want to happen. With embody the energy, it's more like bringing it into the now. So if I want to manifest beautiful, clear skin, for example, I think about what is the energy that I'm going to be embodying when I have beautiful, clear skin. And for me, when I had chronic and crippling acne, this was really challenging, but I had to really imagine, okay, what's going to be different about my life when that's the case? And so for me, it was, I just imagined waking up, really loving myself, like massaging, moisturizer and, a serum into my face and showering and singing and just being really happy to be me, wearing lovely, beautiful, soft clothes and getting on camera and just being really unbothered by my face and my skin. And so as hard as it was for me to embody, I really practiced embodying that energy even when my skin was not good. And if I still have a flare up, which I sometimes do, I actually just had one last week, I've seen a stark difference in how I used to be with how I am now. If and when I can really embody that energy, even if it's hard, even if it feels like there's resistance there, just really giving myself that love and that nourishment that I want and that I imagine for myself if I were to have beautiful, clear skin. And so it's really about pulling that energy from that future projection into the now. So that's an example. Another example could be if you're looking to manifest, I'm trying to think, maybe money or business success, really kind of bringing that energy into the now. So if I was a world-renowned coach and on stages and doing workshops all over the world, what would my energy be like? Like, how would I be approaching this opportunity or this opportunity? And so this is where this can become almost like a question point for us, a decision point when something comes to us. So if I have the manifestation intention that I want to become a really successful coach, I embody what that energy feels like to me, which to me feels confident. It feels very sort of nurturing and support, like I'm a space holder. It feels easeful, there's like the sense of like, I can just be myself, I can just show up. And then when an opportunity comes to me, I can say, okay, how do I feel about this opportunity with regards to that energy? Is this in alignment with that energy or not? And so I think this can be really useful when an opportunity comes to us, or maybe something's not going quite how we want it to. We can use this idea of the energy of what we're calling in to help us make those decisions. And what it comes down to for me is, when we want to manifest something, it's not usually for the thing, it's for how we think the thing will make us feel. So I really want to manifest getting pregnant because I want to get pregnant, and also because pregnancy will make me feel, I believe that pregnancy will make me feel this sense of deep feminine and gratitude and caring and mothering and like vitality and just like so good. I'm so like connected with that. It's very easy for me when I'm trying to get pregnant, if it doesn't happen, for me to lose that connection to that energy and to go to a dark place of, it's never going to happen. It's so, poor me. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? And essentially, when we're trying to manifest, what we're trying to manifest is feeling good in some way. Very rarely when we're intentionally manifesting do we want it manifest feeling bad. And so for me, I use that as a guide. Is this making me feel good? Am I feeling good right now? Because if I'm feeling good, I know that I'm much more in line with what I want to call in than if I don't feel good. Now, obviously, as someone who has diagnosed depression and anxiety and have gone on a very long mental health journey myself, I know it's not that easy just to say, just cheer up and just be happy. It's definitely not. And I do think that for me, having more agency over my thoughts through mindfulness, having an awareness of my thoughts, and then being able to choose has really, really helped me both feel better and also manifest what I want. And so it's definitely not easy. And we'll talk a little bit more about kind of tests and blocks and how we had a great question about how to deal with negative thoughts and negative thoughts that keep popping up. So I'll get to that. But really, kind of in a nutshell, I think embodying the energy is all about watching when my energy is not in alignment with what it is I'm calling in, and making a conscious choice to shift back into that energy. And that kind of leads into the next one, step 4, making space. If we really want to manifest something, we're bringing something into the physical realm that didn't exist before. And our lives are already so full that chances are something will have to be let go of in order for us to do that. And so the obvious example that we've probably heard before is, you say that you want to, and this is something I 100% did, you say you want to manifest a partner, but I'm still texting my ex-boyfriend. So what I'm saying is I want to manifest a partner, but I'm still not creating the space that I need to allow the manifestation to come through if I'm expending a lot of physical time and space and also energetic and emotional attachment to that partner, that ex-partner. So, making the space, I think, is really important and can be done as obviously as that. And then it can also be less obvious. And I'm trying to think of a good example for this. So this came up for me recently. So I manifested a beautiful puppy who I love so much. And that was a process in itself. But what I realized is, as I'm now trying to manifest pregnancy, I realized that the puppy was really stressing me out, and I was really overwhelmed with working full time and puppy duties. And I realized that I was kind of relying on myself to fix everything and get everything done. And I wasn't leaning as much on my partner or asking him or communicating to him to help me. And that was a big learning that took a couple of weeks for me to be like, oh, I need to learn this now so that the manifestation of the baby and the pregnancy can come through. And so that was a big moment for me where I was like, okay, it doesn't feel easy for me to have this conversation with my partner about how I need to be better at asking him for help, and I need him to be better at proactively asking me what he can do to help. It didn't feel good, but I knew it needed to happen because not having the conversation felt worse. And actually, once we'd had the conversation, things just got better and better and better. And now I feel confident that I'm actually able to manage life with 2 dogs, a partner, and a baby, and a full-time job, and doing all my coaching and everything that I love. So yeah, it really was a big learning. And I really needed to make space by having that conversation, and also by getting clear on what my priorities were. And I think a really good way to make space is by really like auditing your life and saying, where do I feel good? Where do I feel drained? What gives me energy? What takes away my energy? And yeah, really kind of making those tough decisions and looking at it and saying, okay, like what's getting in the way here? Like what is not in alignment with that energy? So making the space. And then the next one, passing tests. So tests can come at any time during the process, honestly, but I often find that when I really want to manifest something really big and I go through, giving myself permission, visualizing, embodying that energy for a period of time, making sure that I'm auditing my life and making space and seeing where I'm maybe blocking it by not making the space, then when everything's ready and I'm sure it's coming through, I'll get a test. Now, Lacey also does great work on tests, and I think tests can be really confusing when it feels so close to what we want, but it's not. And so for me, a place I had a lot of tests was in manifesting my partner and also manifesting my buying a house for the first time. So with manifesting a partner, I very much got tested on my old patterning, and I see tests as the universe way of saying, are you sure? Have you really changed? Are you really ready to be this version of yourself and not go back into your old ways? So my patterning with relationships was extremely codependent from childhood, and very, very fearful of being abandoned. And so I would often put myself in not optimal relationship situations, as long as I didn't think the person, would leave me, which inevitably often they did, or I left or whatever. So even by trying to protect myself, it didn't work, but it was like a very subconscious repeat of the pattern that I was really accommodated to growing up. And so, passing tests in relationship looked like for me meeting people that seemed great, but there was maybe a little thing, or they seemed a bit avoidant, or maybe they would say the odd thing that made me feel uneasy. And the test really is, okay, am I going to listen to myself, or am I going to just hang on for dear life and hope that it all works out, which was definitely what I used to do before. Am I going to communicate my needs and be very in my power and in my worth, or am I going to just play along and be whatever this person needs me to be? And so there were maybe 3 or 4 big moments like that before I met my partner, after I'd spent quite a lot of time solo kind of doing this work, where I was really, really tested. And I also had to make a lot of space from an ex that I really struggled with for like a long time, maybe like a year. So relationship stuff, if you're watching this and you're trying to manifest a partner, it is not easy. But once you I think once you do it, the learning, once you do and get through and you meet that person, or you meet a person where it does start to feel good, I do feel like it can unlock so much learning and growth. I must say that the growth has only increased since I've been in partnership. Just so many opportunities to learn. But yeah, do stick with it, because it's just, it is really a wonderful thing when you can kind of look back on it and say, oh, I saw how hard it was, but I see now why it was also worth it. In terms of the house, you know, with a house and buying a house during a pandemic, it was really challenging, and we didn't know we were going to do it. It just kind of, I had the ping that I really wanted to do it, and I had the intention, and we started kind of drawing up the board of, the list of exactly what we wanted in the house. And I had so many tests, and like one of the big tests I had was, a friend kind of coming over and looking at the vision board and saying, oh, you're never gonna find that. You're never going to find all of those things for that price. Like, it's just not going to happen. And then hearing stories about people who had tried to manifest that and failed. And those tests are really the opportunity to dig in and say, I trust, I believe that it's going to happen. And I realign myself with the energy of what I'm calling in, which for me with the house was spaciousness, abundance, connection with nature, because I moved from the city outside of the city. And so with tests, it's really like, okay, you're in the energy when things are going your way. Can you stay in the energy when things are not necessarily going your way? And it's really challenging. That's why they're tests. And of course, every time we had an offer that didn't go through, there was maybe an hour or a day of feeling sad. And then for me, it was like, okay, like, what do I need to do to get back in alignment? And I think that comes from this deep sense of trust, and really from a sense of worthiness. And so when we talk about the energy, and one of the questions I had last night after the live was, how do I stop these negative thoughts, or how can I deal with these negative thoughts? And, for me, it really was a big journey of making choices that are going to make me feel more and more and more worthy, and then just deeply, deeply trusting and believing that it's going to happen for me because I deserve it. So with pregnancy, it's probably the biggest thing that's outside of my control. Even though doctors have told me it's going to be really hard for me to get pregnant, and even though it may be, it feels good for me to stay in the trust that it's going to happen, and stay in the energy of like babies and pregnancy and vitality, and making those small steps every day that supports that, because each of those small steps makes me feel more worthy. So if I say that I want to get pregnant, but I'm going out and not treating myself well, and not treating my body well, not getting enough rest, not avoiding stress, we can see how those actions are not in alignment with my desire. So I think the more we can be in alignment with our desire, the more worthy we're going to feel. And it is definitely a practice. Are there some days where I just feel really low? Absolutely. And that's also okay. We don't want to avoid our feelings, but we do want to connect with that trust muscle as much as we possibly can, which leads me into the last step, which is really just to let go and surrender. So once you know what you want, you've really given yourself permission, and you've seen it to believe it, you've visualized it, you've found expanders, you've found people that inspire you who are doing it, and then you've started to bring that energy into the now, really started to live that and be that person today. You've looked and audited your life and figured out, like, okay, where am I maybe blocking this subconsciously? Where am I not making space for this? And then what tests are coming up? Where am I being triggered? Where am I not feeling good? Those are all examples of tests. And then can I let go and surrender that everything I've done, everything that I can do, I've done, and everything else is left up to the universe, and believe that my only job is to stay in alignment with what it is I'm calling in, and continue to cultivate that feeling of worthiness for what it is that I desire. So those are the steps. I hope that was useful. I know there was a lot there, and I've got so many more stories, and I know I told some different ones last night. I just kind of say whatever comes up in the moment. I'm going to remember a couple of the questions from last night as well. So there was a really good question around health. And the question was, can you manifest yourself out of a chronic, serious health condition? And when I think back to the definition of manifesting, which is just making happen, it's like, can you make happen healing from any kind of chronic or serious illness? We know the answer to that is yes, because there are people who have done it. There are people who have healed from, have gone into spontaneous remission from cancers and terminal illnesses. So we do know that it's possible. I believe it's possible. When we think about making things happen, I don't think about manifesting as just all in the ethereal. A big part of manifesting is action. And where this fits into the sixth step is really embodying the energy and making the space and passing the test too. It's really, there's action there. There's lots and lots of action. It's just not coming from a cognitive place of, what do I need to do to make that happen? It's coming from a place of, I'm going to embody this energy and I'm going to see what comes to me, and I'm going to be looking for those opportunities, and I'm going to take those opportunities when they come, or I'm going to initiate those opportunities, whatever feels good. It really is about choosing things that feel good. And in that choice, there is action. So when it comes to health, when, like myself, trying to heal from a chronic illness over time, there've been so many diets and doctors and pills and all the rest of it. And those are all things that I've manifested and things that have come to me, things that have appeared. It's really our choice what we think is right for us. And so when it comes to manifesting, it's not like sitting on your own at home and wishing for something to be different. It's really aligning yourself with what it is you want. So when I think about health, I think about, what do I want to be true? I want to be healthy. I want to be in vitality. And so I'm going to align myself with that energy as much as I can. And in aligning myself with that energy, I'm going to make choices that help me, whether it's diet, whether it's sleep. And I'm going to keep listening to my intuition, keep listening to those pings or those messages that seem to come from nowhere that are telling me, read this book, do this thing, speak to this person. I'm going to follow that, always with the lens of, is this in line with what I want, which is health and vitality? And for me, with my kind of chronic skin issues, it was shifting from I don't want to have, acne all over my face, to I want to feel and look vibrant. So I think one thing that can help is focusing on what we do want and not focusing on what we don't want, like focusing on wellness rather than illness. And then, like I said on the live, I really do think that this can include both spiritual, emotional, and physical Western healing. I'm very open to all of it. I think that you can heal just from doing emotional work, and I think you can heal from just doing physical, kind of more standard Western medicine. For me, the thing that has proved the most beneficial is being open to all of it and letting my intuition guide me. So those are my thoughts. Not a medical professional by any stretch, but those are just my opinions on health. Another question that we had was around negative thoughts. And I talked a little bit about this already, but this is where, for me, when I started doing this work, I started noticing just how much I was not aware of my thoughts. And this is where mindfulness really comes in. So much of our behavior, it's estimated about 95% of our behavior is driven by our subconscious mind. And a lot of us are not aware really of that, kind of below it's subconscious, it's below consciousness. Of course we're not aware. And so I think the first step for me was really becoming as aware as I possibly could of what my brain was doing, where my mind was going, what my tendency was. And often for me that was to the negative, especially around myself, especially in a place of judgment. And so mindfulness as a practice, I know it's been kind of overstated at this point, but I really think it can be so useful for these kind of intentional practices like manifesting, because what we're actually doing is training our brain so that we can choose what our response is. So if something bad happens to us or we feel triggered in some way, being able to feel the feelings, process it, and then choose, okay, I choose to let this go, or I choose to resolve it in this way, rather than pushing it away and then subconsciously stewing in it for days, weeks, months, years. And so I really try to allow everything in, whether it's good or bad, and really experience it. And then kind of use mindfulness to notice, how is it I'm feeling? What is it I need? And really create that deep connection with myself and with my thoughts. And so I think if you're finding yourself in a place where you are very much having critical thoughts about yourself, the practice of mindfulness can be very, very useful. And then also spending some time with that part of you that is thinking something maybe on repeat, and really kind of trying to make friends with that part of you and have compassion with it. That's been something that's been very useful for me. So with my skin, there was a part of me that is still very much kind of, I call it the fixer. It's the part of me that really wants to like look at my skin and sort of analyze it in the camera and then say, okay, what needs fixing, and go to the mirror and often pick my face, which actually led to a very debilitating chronic skin picking disorder where I was very much compulsively picking at my skin all over my body, causing myself bleeding and infections. And that developed over decades. And was something I struggled with until very recently. And so, that's an example of where a negative thought pattern becomes so strong and so ingrained in my neural pathways that it becomes the default. Whereas most people probably look in the mirror and don't look with such fixation on any kind of imperfections. And so I really had to retrain my brain with help from an amazing psychotherapist to notice those negative patterns and retrain my brain on an alternative way of looking at things. It's still a work in progress. We're always going to be a work in progress, but the first step was acknowledging and bringing awareness to that part of me, and then asking for help, receiving help, and then retraining my brain on what I did want, on how I did want to feel when I looked in the mirror, how I did want to feel when I looked and thought about my skin. So I want to share that to give anyone hope if you do have kind of very persistent negative thoughts. And I really do believe that our brains are just so capable of change. That's been proven by the neuroscience. We can actively, through mindfulness, through meditation, through learning, change the physical structure of our brains. And so you will not be the same person today as you will be in a year's time, especially if you are really focused on who you want to be and what you want to be doing and what you want to manifest. Okay, so I can't think of any other questions, but you're always welcome to message me. I will just share with you my Instagram handle is mindfully Laura. And you can catch me on YouTube and also on Instagram. I've been uploading videos on YouTube. I will probably put this one up there too. And so, yeah, please do get in touch on Instagram. It's probably the best way. And really always very happy to hear what you're manifesting. There will be a practice that goes alongside this video to support you in manifesting the 2021 of your dreams. And just know that whatever you want, whatever it is that you're really calling in and wanting for yourself in 2021, it absolutely is possible. It absolutely is. And you deserve support and you deserve everything that it is that you want. So I am here to support you. Let me know how I can. And if you have any more questions, just feel free to reach out. So happy manifesting, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.